Welcome all, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Evan.
My name is Taylor. I read a book.
I watched a movie. This week, we're doing The Irishman.
Or I Heard You Paint Houses.
It's interesting. They have the title in the film as well,
Yeah.
at the beginning and the end, which I thought was, they have both titles. So I thought was really interesting, but I liked it a lot.
We'll get into how the author collaborated at the very end and why they put two titles for the same movie.
Very interesting. Good.
Yeah.
I wanted to know more about that. But if you didn't know, and I didn't know, I just went into the movie cold. I hadn't seen any trailers. But this is about, at its root, Jimmy Hoffa, the disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa. I had no idea. It took me an hour into the movie to kind of really realize that this is where the movie was going.
Which is fine because the movie is 3.5 hours long. It is the most expensive movie that Martin Scorcese has ever made.
Real quick,
Yeah.
3.5 hours. I started it one morning at 10 a.m. I didn't finish it until after 5 p.m. I was texting my girlfriend in the middle, like, this is the Bermuda Triangle of movies. I still have a whole movie left. It was after 3 p.m., but I still had an hour and a half left, and I don't know where my day went and what happened to me.
It is the longest movie he's ever made. And it's on Netflix. So you might have watched it if you're listening to this, or you're interested in watching it. But yeah, it's about Jimmy Hoffa. And for some historical context of who this guy is and why it was so important that he disappeared and potentially why the mafia hid it. Nobody knows anything. Nobody's saying anything. And also why there's a million theories about what happened. So he's a labor leader, meaning leading the unions, the Teamsters specifically, which was truck driving, and then it expanded into farm workers and chauffeurs and all different kinds of stuff.
I knew he was the union, the Teamster union guy, and that somehow he had, there was a power dynamic that set him up in a feud with the president and the Kennedys. And I never got that, how it is that somebody like that has that much power against somebody like the president. It's really politically that has that much momentum behind them.
So the unions from 50 to 70 thereabouts was when Jimmy Hoffa was the main dude on this. In the first 2 years following World War II, there were 8,000 strikes in 48 states, which is about 160 per year per state that were going on with these.
So people came home from the war and they were being taken advantage of?
Yeah.
Is that the situation?
Yeah, and it was just like, we need equal pay, we need these rights, we need to stick together as truck drivers or as meat packers as steel workers or as janitors, whatever it might be, because we're being taken advantage of by these larger companies who are combining us all together. But that was just crazy to me. Like, we don't think about it. Imagine 160 strikes per year per state going on with all of these different labor forces.
They got to issue.
They need somebody to lead them. Here comes this guy running the game. The other part of it was that he was huge on television. This is when television is coming about. He's very vocal. He's very brash. Yeah. He's all over the place.
The first presidential debate is televised, I think, in the 60s.
That is a lot of how he gains popularity. And then the other part of it is the mob is involved in all of this. So they have their fingers in a lot of pie as far as being involved in the unions and having their people involved and taking cuts from things. The biggest thing that I didn't realize was, and this becomes a big part in the movie, also just to let everybody know we're going to spoil everything in the movie.
Yeah, this will be a spoiler-heavy episode, so just be warned. I mean, usually we talk about plots and stuff, but we don't, shine a lights on direct things. But in this case, it's kind of hard to talk about any of this stuff without being specific.
Yeah. A big part of the movie is how they're giving out loans. Like, the mob owns a certain part of the pension fund from the Teamsters, and that is what then they're using to give loans to the mob to buy real estate, casinos mostly. And then they would, of course, pay them back with interest, whatever. But it was
kind of brilliant that the mob is able to embed themselves in a legitimate legal organization and run as cover. It's kind of brilliant.
It's just a big laundering scheme. So by 1974, the Teamsters had $1 billion loaned to real estate ventures through the pension fund, mostly to the mob.
What year?
1974.
Oh, wow.
So this is 80% of Chase Manhattan Bank's loans. So they are one of the largest financial institutions in terms of loaning for real estate. And it's all coming through this illegitimate pension fund. And it's all going to the mob.
Oh, my gosh. So that was happening through the back half of the 50s, all through the 60s.
Yeah. So this is then why you could see why it goes all the way up the chain and why giant people in national positions of power would be like, we got to fix all this whole thing, the unions, the mob, everything, real estate.
This gives
everything
context on the Kennedy situation. Not only, I mean, was Hoffa and the Kennedys feuding out publicly, but I mean, remember the president was shot in 1963, and then his brother was shot in 1968. It's a pretty chaotic time. This is just another side of it that I'm like, as soon as I realized this is where it was going, and that even it would just touch on the Kennedy stuff, I went, oh my God, I could grip my seat and let's go.
Yeah. Kind of like
I'm into this.
Yeah. Kind of like with the Ford versus Ferrari, where we're talking about how the story is actually about Ken Miles, the random driver. This story is about the Irishman, Frank Sheeran, who some people describe as the Forrest Gump of organized crime, because he just happens to be, according to this book, in every major situation involved in the mafia from this time.
They play out several historical assassinations, a lot of which are unsolved, and this is as I'm kind of figuring out what the movie is about. And there was a murder, it was gallows murder outside of the Umberto's Clam House, and I'm like, I've seen these photos. Isn't this supposed to be unsolved? Oh, wow. And so that feeling, exactly what you said, I laugh at it when you say it, but it is exactly kind of how I felt.
Obviously, the author of this book, who spent years with this guy, believes him because he wrote the book. But there's a lot of people that don't. I'll link to some articles where people are refuting it. I don't necessarily care who. It's like the mafia killed him. Jimmy Hoffa. Some of these other miscellaneous things, it's like somebody in the mafia did it, whether it was this Irishman, Frank Sheeran, whether it was somebody else.
It's just an event that I think it's shocking when it's not fake, man. The guy went missing. This is somebody that's on TV all the time. He's a famous public figure, and then he really did just disappear. It's captivating.
Yeah.
And the fact that can happen, it can just play out in real life on the street. I mean, it's unsettling.
And nobody says anything, and now everybody is either in jail or dead, or like this Frank Sheeran guy exposing everything.
Taking credit for it,
but he might be lying. Yeah. He might have lied about everything.
He might have lied about everything. Everything might be true. It might be one or the other. There are so many theories about what happened to him. You have so many people, like Richard Kuklinski is a very famous murderer called the Iceman. They made movies about him. He took credit for the Hoffa murder with only in the last decade or so or something.
Yeah, the book is called The Iceman: Confessions of a Mafia Contract Killer. It came out in 2006.
Right.
2 years after this book came out, and he claimed that he threw him in an oil drum and then welded it shut and then put it in a car, and then the car got smashed and sent to Japan. And like all this crazy stuff. According to the author of this book, there are 14 people that have claimed to kill Hoffa.
Yeah.
So it's like
that's how crazy it is.
So whether or not, just as a huge preface, this is true or not, this is this guy's story, and this is the story that got turned into the fictional account, which is the movie The Irishman. I was surprised because I had looked at little bits and pieces of the movie, how true they stick to the elements from the book, and which is also why the movie is so long. But there's a lot of stuff that, as I go through what he talks about in the book and how it connects to some other things in real life, how many elements they took from the
fantastic
book.
Yeah. I mean, I figured with that kind of runtime and there's the painstaking detail that you can just see and feel on the screen in every frame, the book has got to be so rich with some of this, or at least just get point in so many directions for them to go. I mean, it's very, very rich with texture of your time period and your feel. And a lot of people are talking about the CG that's been used to de-age and then de-age, up-age, it's insane. And I got to say, for myself, didn't bother me that much because, like, we're talking about a story that takes place over 30 years or more. And I guarantee you, if you think that you can pick out every piece of this de-aging, up-aging, you can't. And there are going to be sections of this film that you think are de-aged, up-aged. They're not. You're not going to be able to pick it out in every scene. It's very good. And as somebody who's worked in visual effects, there's a lot that's not been done to them, and there's a lot that has been done to them, and it's different in every shot and in every scene. So it's really a collage of a lot of different techniques you're seeing, and it's pulled off unjarring to me. It's not the bet. It's not insane.
We're getting
sometimes
there.
You can see it, sometimes you can't, but I thought it to be totally serviceable, melts into the picture. I enjoyed it.
The main character. So speaking of the texture and the amount of work that went into this, there are a lot of names, a lot of Italian names, a lot of Irish names, a lot of different people involved in the mob and the mafia that he goes into in this book. So I won't go into all of them, but the three big ones that you need to know, which are the actors at the front of the poster, is Frank Sheeran, who is Robert De Niro.
The main character.
Yeah. Russ Bufalino, who is the mafia mob guy up in New England, who is played by Joe Pesci.
Out of retirement. Fantastic, by the way.
Yeah.
And he, at some points in the film, looks decrepit and horrible. It's all makeup. When you see him in real life, he actually looks really good. He's probably on the younger side of the aging that they do, and he's specifically what I mean. And you're gonna say, oh, he looks, that's real life. You're probably gonna be wrong.
Yeah. So he's Russ Bufalino, who is the mafia guy, who is most like the Godfather. Hoffa, who's the guy who gets murdered and nobody knows what happened, and that is Al Pacino.
Which I think this is the first film that him and Scorsese have made together. So, like, strangely enough, even though he feels he's in that realm of all these, but this is actually the first one that he's actually made with Scorsese. So that's kind of an interesting thing. That's definitely a draw, I think, for at least cinema fans and fans of these actors and this filmmaker.
Mm-hmm. But this Frank guy, starting out, he was 9 years old in 1929, Great Depression. He said nobody had money anyway, so it didn't matter. This is Philadelphia. This is Pennsylvania is where he's in, which is interesting that this Russ Bufalino mafia guy is in Pennsylvania and parts of he's not like the head of New York.
Yeah.
He's still involved in New England, but he was kind of the understated, according to this book, head of a lot of things and had his fingers in a lot of pies in New York and elsewhere. Mm-hmm. But this guy doesn't know anything about it growing up. He was taught as a kid by his dad, because they were so poor, to kind of do malicious things. So they were stealing food from farms as a kid, and he got shot with bird shot. And his mom was like, why am I always having to pick this out of his butt? And it's like, because he's too slow. But he said, just as a part of it, there was no kissing, no affection. He was like, I never saw my mom kiss any of my siblings or me or anything.
Oh, God.
His first job was at the age of 7, and they kept on moving from apartment to apartment because they wouldn't have any money, and then they would just go out before they, just that life that you're starting out with. His dad worked a million different jobs, worked on high up on the steel beams, worked at a janitor at his school, and his dad would bet because, and I don't know if they do this in the movie to the same degree as it's made clear in the book, this dude is huge. He is 6'4". He's this giant Irish dude. He's a fighter. Oh. He doesn't fit in with all these other squat Italian old men.
They definitely try to make him make something of his stature, but I don't know if it's quite that. I don't know if it reaches the accuracy there. But I mean, they definitely do try to do something with his stature, but ultimately.
Yeah. As a kid, his dad would use him to fight other kids and bet on him and be like, I bet my kid can beat up your kid.
Oh my gosh.
And
it's like dogfighting.
Yeah, but with his kid. But it's so messed up. But he's like, that's what happened. He lived in a mostly Italian neighborhood, so that's how he learned Italian and sort of endeared himself to the Italian mafia. He said it also helped later in the war when he goes into World War II and fights mostly in Italy. This is how he picked up on Italian and endeared himself to them. There was a prank that he pulled in his high school where he put some Limburger cheese in the radiator, and then his dad, who was the janitor, found it, knew it was him. And he was like, when he gets home, he knows it's going to be him. So he was like, do you want to eat first or eat after I kick your ass? And he was like, I'll eat first because I won't be able to eat afterwards. There was a time, once he got older and realized in high school that he was able to fight people and stand up for himself, even towards adults, the principal cuffed him in the back of the head for something that he did.
What?
And then he decked the principal.
Oh my gosh.
Broke his jaw. And he knew he was going to get it when his dad got home. But then his dad threw him the boxing gloves. Because remember, his dad's
like, this is all the Spielberg movie.
Yeah,
if Spielberg decided to do The Irishman, this would be the setup here.
Yeah, of him and his childhood being violent. Yeah. So his dad throws him the boxing gloves and is like, let's go.
See?
And he throws the boxing gloves back at his dad and says,
see?
He says, I won't hit you, but you'd better get yourself another punching bag. And so then after that, he gets expelled from school. He's done with school. He's not going to high school anymore. He joins the carnival, setting up and tearing down. They travel all around New England. And then he works at a logging camp. He works for a glass setter back in Philadelphia. He said it was an easy life, no responsibilities, just making money, doing odd jobs, canoodling with women, going out drinking, dancing. He loved dancing so much.
He loved dancing
a lot. He was a dance instructor.
I hope that's on his grave.
Yeah,
he loved dancing.
He really did.
Also, maybe killed Jimmy. He loved dancing.
Yeah. Unfortunately, all that love for the easy life. World War II hits. Just for some context of how insane now his life becomes. The average number of combat days for somebody was 80, and he had 411.
I had that written. I'd seen that too. Yeah, I thought that was just outstanding. I can't. That's a whole year. That is way over a whole year.
If you just for a straight every single day. I mean,
every day
time, but yeah, it was like that much time in the span of time that you were in the war. He also was in the craziest, like he was a part of the 45th Infantry, which eventually got under Patton's killer division.
Oh, really?
Where they were eventually, I don't know if they were tried but they were definitely committing war crimes where Patton was like, take no prisoners. Here's the German officers that we captured. Hurry back. Basically means you kill them.
Yeah.
And don't say anything. Yeah. That kind of thing. So the author, Charles Brandt of the book, who interviewed him, said this was the hardest thing to get him to talk about was his combat experiences. He was in, like I said, Italy. He said, I learned there to follow orders or else, which is probably also how later when he gets tied into the mafia, he's able to just glide right in because he understands how that world
certainly
works.
Being primed for the direction it's headed.
Of just killing people,
bananas
being told
to hear not only the childhood, but then thrown into the most vicious war that mankind's ever seen, and to be part of probably, some of the more vicious ends of that combat. He's being primed for exactly what ends up happening. It's kind of fascinating that's where I'm struck right now, is seeing somebody conditioned and being, tailored on to, I mean, he is headed down a road, and as we know, it didn't change. It didn't,
he's in it.
If I'm in the mob, how do you find talent like that? Like that's if I'm those people, that's what I'm thinking. I'm like,
that has no connections. And if you had to kill him, it would just like, oh well, then we'll just kill him.
Yeah,
and nobody
he knows how to do it. He can do it. He's proved it. I mean, I think about this like hiring somebody for any other office job. It's like he knows how to use Windows XP and has used that model of printer before. This guy is right for the. Yeah. It's like it's staggering to me. So what are you being groomed for? And that's what I'm saying it to me. Where am I in my life? That what's happening? Where am I headed?
And at this point, when he gets back from the war, he doesn't know where he's headed. He's doing random jobs all over the place still, seen a lot of his friends die. There was this carnival that came in because he's in the carnival, so he knows about it. And it was that you could fight a kangaroo, and if you lasted 3 rounds, you won $100.
Tight.
Which is not chump change at the time.
I think in the film, at one point later on, he becomes like a boss of the union, and there is a photograph of this in the background of his office. Now that you say this, I think it's just something I happened to catch off, but I feel like, and I might be wrong, but I feel like I saw that.
With all of the elements from the book.
Yeah, because it just looked insane.
Well, no, he did
fight a photograph on his office wall.
No, he did fight a kangaroo and won. But he said there was this pretty Irish lady in the 3rd row who eventually then becomes his first wife. They married in 1947. He's still doing a bunch of random jobs. He was a bouncer. He was a truck driver. He was a dance instructor. He was saying in the book, he was like, I didn't give my family enough time. I hung out with the truck drivers too much. At this point now, he's driving the trucks. And I believe this is in the movie as well.
I think this is where the movie kind of picks up. Because he's driving the trucks, which is key.
He's driving the trucks, and there's this short Italian man who helped fix his truck somewhere in upstate New York. He was like, I thought he ran the gas station, or I thought he was just some random old guy helping me out. This is Russell Bufalino, the Joe Pesci character, who is just by pure happenstance, and then they don't interact with each other, and that's just that, and la-di-da. But this is where the truck stuff comes in, because he does start meeting people, hanging out at the bars with the truckers, with the union. It's whispers in the wind of his mind of joining the union, that kind of thing. And they're like, oh, yeah, you can sell this meat on the side. But again, this is the start of him getting into, it's not quite the mob yet in the mafia, but it's like everybody is just turning their head.
He has a great line with his lawyer. He's meeting his lawyer, and the lawyer is kind of having the reel to reel with him by the end of their meeting, and being like, "What's the real deal? Are you guilty?" He goes, "I work for those people real hard when I ain't stealing from them." They both go.
There's a lawsuit that happens with him in 56, though no one rats. He doesn't rat. but he has to resign from the truck driving because of that. So he starts taking errands for the mafia. This is where this comes about. He gets guys who are late on money. He stops people messing with somebody else's girl, like nothing too crazy, just getting
He's just
him
a
in
strong arm.
And then this is where it starts with him being the Forrest Gump. There is this Appalachian, which is a city in New York, and happens in 1957. This is where all of the big mafia bosses meet up from all over the place, and police got wind of it because there were a bunch of fancy cars and butcher shops were being sold out of meat and whatever, and they captured like 50 of them. Because they were just like, look at all these fancy cars just parked at this random place.
Something's going on.
And allegedly, Frank says that he drove Russell up to that meeting. So this is just one of his little moments where he was like, yes, I was
there.
I was in Mob Boss history. He asked me to do this little errand for him and drive him up there. So the next thing that is big in terms of the history that comes about is he's doing all these little errands. He wants to become a Teamster, though. At this point, he's divorced from his first wife. He said there was no love. It was all just drinking and ego. Like, he regrets it all. And Russell gets him on the phone then with Jimmy Hoffa. And he says the first words that Jimmy Hoffa said were, I heard you paint houses. And he says, and I do carpentry work too. Interestingly, he says on the phone there, he was like, for a minute there, I thought it was Patton, referring to George Patton, the Army general that was crazy in World War II. Like, they had the same energy, which you're talking about the connections of how he's kind of groomed for this. It's like, oh, here's a strong leader who's very vocal and over the top with his demands.
Yeah.
I can deal with this.
Fits right in. It's like, it's such a strange hinting of energy that gets passed around that I'm always kind of fascinated. It's like, well, how do some people click and how do some people not? And I find it so fascinating when like I felt like I was talking to Patton. I felt like I was talking to somebody else. You know, like, oh, I can talk to you.
But now that he's gone to Detroit, he's a part of Local 299. He's a taxi organizer. They're doing pickets. They're doing all the union stuff. He's doing it for Hoffa, but he's also doing hits and random stuff. He said he had to go do a hit in Chicago. And he says in the book it was kind of like his father making the beer bets with the kids again, where it's like, I bet that you can go, my kid's stronger than you, and go beat him up. He just felt like it was that with Hoffa. Again, just being like, hey, go take care of this guy in Chicago.
Just groomed for it. It's fascinating.
Another historical moment that he feels like he was involved in, or at least had some privy to, is this other mafia guy, Giancana, that he would fix the election in Illinois for Kennedy, and Kennedy would help them in Cuba because they had a lot of real estate and gambling and work over there. And so Kennedy would do some work to fix up Cuba for them if they would help him win the election. And that's something that apparently he knows about what happened.
Yeah. And see, and all that is kind of taking place with as the Kennedys rise to power. And if you are acquainted with any of that, you know, the Bay of Pigs is just on the horizon. And so you're getting some context as to perhaps the motivations that, you know, that are curtaining this.
Is multifold.
Yeah.
Is that there's some mafia influence in their regard. Yeah. So then the next Forrest Gump moment for him is this Joe Gallo murder that you mentioned at the Clam House. He says he was involved in that. At this point, they're
very famously unsolved. It's kind of like a touristy spot for like people who are interested in mob culture. If you're into that kind of stuff, you know where this is, and if you're passing through that part of town, you're going there.
He just mostly this part of the book is him just saying how much he loved working for the Teamsters. Like that was his primary thing, and then his secondary thing was doing random hits for the mafia and going around the United States and just killing 30 people. And
that was all right. Yeah, but I really like working for the truckers.
That's what he was all about. And he had heard Hoffa, because this was not unknown, that Hoffa wanted to kill Bobby Kennedy, who is now at this point the Attorney General, who has the Get Hoffa squad, and they're really trying to pin him on crazy stuff that he's doing, a la the pension loans. There was a film project based on Bobby Kennedy's book called The Enemy Within about Hoffa. And I
bet that would be a fascinating
I think Paul Newman was slated to be on it. It got abandoned because there was this guy Schulberg who wrote the script for this producer. The producer died suddenly, and according to this author, he's saying the deal with 20th Century Fox for this thing based on the book died when, and I'll just quote him, a labor tough walked right into the office of the new head of the studio to warn him that if the picture was ever made, drivers would refuse to deliver the prints to the theaters, and if they got there by any other means, stink bombs would drive out the audiences.
What?
So there was pressure from the mafia at 20th Century Fox, and then Columbia and Paramount, they're all like, well, we're not going to make this then.
Oh, wow.
Because of the truck drivers. Because of the Teamsters.
When was this?
This was in the 60s when Bobby Kennedy's book came out called The Enemy Within about Hoffa. Yeah. Yeah, we're not.
It's like a mob tactic just played out just squarely through the Union in public view. That's kind of...
Yeah.
I love it.
So that movie did not get made. So, and then the other thing that he goes into in the historical thing is Hoffa inciting the JFK killing, which is all conspiracy and who knows anything about anything. But tying into all this stuff, he was saying that he even was in charge of one of his little errands that he did was bringing this duffel bag with guns and shipping them to Dallas and all this stuff. And then that is his little piece of the puzzle in terms of helping with the whole assassination.
Well, they definitely had a whole segment of him picking up weapons and then getting them shipped to Cuba, which then incites the big fiasco. So, and then he's just like eating cereal, watching the news as like a war plays out 90 miles off of the Florida coast. He's like, weird. It's not like I didn't see people loading rocket launches into my truck last week.
Yeah, they do have in the book a lot of different things that he says that he was somehow just like the middleman involved in all of these major events from the 60s and 70s. They do get Hoffa at this point on not even the stuff that they wanted to get him on, but it was just that he was tampering with the jury. In the case that they were, it was like, dude, you're fine. So what they ended up getting, he got 8 years because they had tried to have this trial in Nashville, and then he bribed and tampered with the jury and all this stuff, and then they moved it to Chattanooga, and then that's what they got him for. So he got 8 years for that, for the thing that he was trying to stop doing, not even the thing that they had him on trial for. The turn here, and which is why we don't know anything necessarily about Teamsters and labor unions and all of that, is because this guy Fitzsimmons, or just Fitz is what they call him in the book, he becomes the president while Hoffa is in jail. And another historical moment is with this Irishman is that he says $500,000 to Nixon to pardon him for being in jail, which eventually does happen, is Nixon pardons Hoffa. And he's saying that's the reason that happened, was because of a huge bribe. And now that we know Nixon, it's like, maybe he was taking money. I don't know.
Maybe.
You know?
Yeah. It's all plausible. It's like, maybe.
Yeah.
That's where
this is all a big maybe.
Maybe. But it is interesting. It's like, it's not that it's boring or not interesting. You go like, I like looking at it as a positive, like, maybe.
And it also could not have been Frank Sheeran who did any of this. It could have been somebody else, and he just heard about it, and he says he did it.
Yeah. But he could have killed the guy that did it.
Yeah. Or whatever. Who knows?
Who knows?
But he's not like.
But it doesn't sound crazy, and what happens to like how it plays out isn't like fantastic. You go, well, maybe.
Yeah. So whatever happened, the thing that got Hoffa was the fact that he did get pardoned, but there was a clause in his pardoning that he could not run for president of any labor union or office until 1980.
They got him.
And so this Fitzsimmons guy was like, oh, well, once I get out, I'm just going to do the thing in 76. If he had just stayed in jail, he would have been able to run again in 76.
Yeah.
And that was the whole thing.
It's kind of interesting. Getting out has really kind of teed him up for what happened. The whole thing. It is the inciting incident for how he gets in trouble because he will not stop. If he just stayed in jail, maybe there would have been an avenue to get involved, but he tried to get in the middle of the momentum that was already carrying on without him. It's like, you can't just like pop out of jail and be like, I'm back, baby. It's
and
like,
the reason
doesn't work like that, dude.
The reason he went in jail was because he was trying so hard not to get in jail. And then he got out of jail, and then they were like, well, fine, but you can't do what you did. And so then he goes on a rampage because he says that's illegal because you can't it's like you can't add another clause to a pardon. It's like you pardon him for the crime, but then give him punishment for a different crime. That's up to the judge and the jury, not the president. That kind of thing. So he has legal grounds for it. Interestingly, Watergate happens months later, whether or not they knew about that. And then we're like, well, screw you, Nixon. We're going to get you back. Who knows? But yeah. In 1973, his parole ends, and so he's able to fight this and try to become the president. But of course, now he's all up against the mafia and the mob. They're like, no, stop doing stuff. Like, we got Fitz in as president, just like, go your own way.
Everything's fine.
We're going to be fine. And he's like, I'm going to tell everything about the mafia.
This is my union.
Yeah. And so then this is why they're saying Fitz's weakness was being a benefit to the mob. Like he was a lump. They said he was a peanut butter sandwich. That's what they described him as. He'll melt in a second.
Portly old peanut butter sandwich.
Yeah, that's what he was. But the mafia wanted him. It's like, we don't want Hoffa anymore. We want this guy.
Yeah,
who's
we can
fine.
get anything we want out of him. Look, squeeze him.
Yeah,
we can
what
get
we're doing.
anything out of him.
In 1974, they have an appreciation night for Frank Sheeran, which shows how important he was to the mafia and to these efforts. There was also a meeting at this point between Hoffa and Russell said, according to Sheeran, some people think you don't have an appreciation for Dallas, implying the Kennedy assassination and what he did. And then, of course, this is when he paints houses, and they're like, hey, Sheeran, you got to get him. And so this is the whole July 30th, 1975. Yeah. They think it's going to be a meetup. Hoffa is, and then this is where everybody's like, well, it could have gone a million different ways.
Yeah.
But according to Sheeran, then this is what happens in the movie, is when he kills his friend.
An ultimate betrayal, but an ultimate loyalty, because at the end of the day, he's in line with the mob and he's in line with the union, because at this point, Hoffa has kind of transcended sides, and Hoffa can't see that. And that's what's fatal.
And this happens in 75. His daughter, Peggy, is 26 years old. She said, I don't even want to know a person like you. And he said they never spoke after that. So
do you want to talk about the daughter stuff? Because I've heard some talk around the Peggy character and how that is portrayed and how that point comes across. I think I saw a headline that says Anna Paquin becomes moral center, and then it was a double headline. It was like, she has 7 words in this movie. And so they go on talking about, in the time we're in now, is this a decent enough role for a woman actress of that stature?
Right.
And I actually think they're missing the point. Because, again, this story takes place over the course of 30 years. Multiple actresses play this character. Anna Paquin only plays it through the back half. And the entire point of that character existing at all is that the relationship dissolves.
Yeah.
The relationship does not exist. And so you can't really do that effectively with a character that is constantly professing everything that they're saying and feeling directly to the protagonist.
It's about how Frank screwed up and is going to be lonely forever.
The only way you can feel the ultimate takeaway of this relationship is for her to not say much of anything at all. And that should be emotionally where you are by the end of the film, going, oh my God, he's alone.
Yeah.
I get the argument there. I mean, certainly I wish there was more Anna Paquin in the film. I like Anna Paquin. She's a great actress. It's in a movie with, incredible cast and crew, but it almost is a testament to how good she is that she doesn't have a lot of lines.
Right.
I mean, somebody at Variety or something said she becomes the moral center of the film. How does that happen with a character that has 7 lines? Well, I'll tell you how it happens. Is it is impactful. It's emotional. It does work. Yeah. And that's the point, is she doesn't talk to him.
Yeah. And to see how lonely this guy is. He was 62 years old, and he still had 18 more years in prison. So in 1991, he got parole for medical reasons at 71 years old. And then that's where he's in the nursing home. And so the author of this book then is the lawyer who works in medical malpractice, and he talks to him. And in the last 5 years of his life is when he visited him. And this is where he lends the validity to what this guy is saying. Is like, this wasn't Frank on a stand at a jury trial for 3 days. This was 5 years of life going and talking with him on the phone all the time. Hundreds of hours of recorded as well as written, as well as just being with the dude.
If you're in that position, I could very well understand how you could come to believe that most of what he's saying is the absolute truth.
Yeah.
I'm personally, maybe. That's where I say, maybe. I don't know. But if I'm sitting there with the guy looking in his eyes and he's telling me I did all this and I'm seeing how sad he is, I can start to believe that to be the truth, maybe.
Yeah. And the final interesting bit as far as him and the validity of it all, DeNiro reached out to him after the book came out and said, hey, let's meet up. They worked with the screenwriter and Martin Scorcese together. It was supposed to be just like an hour thing. They talked for 4 hours. The writer Steve Zalian wrote Schindler's List, who he won an Oscar for. He also wrote Mission Impossible, Gangs of New York, American Gangster. So he knows the scene.
Well.
But at the time, also in 2014, there's another investigative journalist, Dan Moldia, and he called DeNiro and was like, I know I don't have much time with you because you're busy, but like, you're being conned. This isn't real. Like, I've been working, there's hundreds of people. The FBI had over 200 agents and spent millions of dollars. Like,
oh my gosh.
You know what I mean? Like,
oh, no way, really?
Don't make this.
Yeah.
Obviously, De Niro's a smart dude. Scorsese's, like, they made it anyways. So the interesting thing is, even if it is or isn't real, doesn't that make it all the more poignant and sadder to realize that, like, here's this guy who just lied about all this stuff. Is there any absolution for him in the fact that now his family is going to be wealthier
it doesn't
because
change
of it?
his outcome at all.
Yeah.
Whether it's true or not, he still ended up in the exact same place, totally alone, totally obscured from his family. His daughter did not talk to him for the rest of his life. That's very real. Could it be fantastical? Is he the Forrest Gump of crime, of organized crime? Or is he just a nobody who wanted to be special and wanted to be someone? At the end of the day, when it comes down to where that dude ended up, it didn't change a thing.
Yeah. The Irishman.
Fascinating.
The reason it said I heard you paint houses at the beginning was because they had worked so closely with this author, Charles Brandt, on the script, and they had that meeting, and they thought that it was monumental enough to put the title of the book as well as the title of the movie.
I loved it.
In the thing.
I loved it. Real quick before we go, we didn't get to talk about, I just love some of the conspiracy theories around what happened to Jimmy Hoffa, and I think we'd be remiss to not say one of the more ridiculous ones was that they had posited that maybe he was buried under the New Jersey Giants football stadium.
Which doesn't exist now.
There was a very famous hump, right? I can't remember what yard line it was on, but it was very famous, and people, players would trip on it, and it was notorious to, there's a hump and nobody knew it was there. They even went as far to have it x-rayed.
By Mythbusters.
Yeah. Was it Mythbusters?
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. I remember having seen that. And it's like, I think that's kind of might have been some of my introduction to Jimmy Hoffa at all.
Yeah.
That's as wild as it got.
I had one little additional thing to add. We didn't talk too much about Bufalino, the main mob guy, but his influence spanned into movies as well. So he had allegedly final script approval of the movie The Godfather.
What?
Because what happened was Francis Ford Coppola rejected Al Martino, who was going to play Johnny Fontaine. They were like, you're not a professional actor. You're just a singer. So Martino called Bufalino, who reached out to the Paramount head, Robert Evans, and then Martino got the part. And so this author, just at a random writers' conference, talked to Wanda Ruddy, who is the wife of the producer of The Godfather, Al Ruddy, and she said, yeah, Russell Bufalino had the final script approval.
Oh my gosh.
So that was why that guy got the part. And they were and Francis Ford Coppola was like, well, we're not going to show your face. You're not a good actor. And he was like, I don't care. I just want to be in the movie. And so if you look at the Godfather, like, they don't show his face.
That's amazing. So Bufalino is the
actual Godfather.
Yeah, no. So Bufalino has influence of everything that has informed mobster, culture, for the last 50 years.
We're not going to make this movie about Kennedy. We are going to make a movie about the Godfather.
Just pulling strings. Who is this man? This is insane.
Yeah, it's all connected.
It's all connected, man. How incredible.
Yeah.
I love this show. I love being. You never know what we're going to cover. Everything's based on a book. It's incredible. Yeah. What is your favorite adaptation? Let us know.
Yeah.
I'm interested. I want to know.
At illiterate pod on Instagram. Send us a message. Let us know. And we will catch you all next week.
Later.